Genesis 15 is quite the unusual passage, isn't it? It's not one that we would normally flick to in a time of crisis, yet in it we find some of the most beautiful expressions of the faithfulness, the goodness, and the promises of God being kept and being promised for future generations. Well, Abraham took some animals, just like my friends behind me here, and he cut them in half. Now, the idea was that he was going to walk through these pieces. That was what would have been understood. You know, me and the other kings in the past, we would have walked through the pieces. This would have been a way to illustrate what would have happened if we had broken the promises that we were going to make to each other. May I be torn apart, just like the animals that we're walking through were torn apart. But there's a very key difference here for Abraham. For him, he's forced into a deep sleep, and God himself passes through in the form of a smoking fire pot and a blazing torch. He passes through the pieces on behalf of God himself and of Abraham. The idea being that God is saying, look, Abraham, I know you're not going to keep your side of the deal, but I'm going to keep my side of the deal and your side of the deal. If you fail to keep your end of the bargain, Abraham, which is a life of walking in righteousness in front of me, if you can't keep that, I'm going to keep that. And what that means at the end is that when Jesus comes and he takes the bread and he breaks it saying, this is my body broken for you. And so that's the whole idea. Jesus is essentially saying, yes, that covenant that was made between Abraham and God himself, now I'm here. God himself has come to fulfill that promise that whenever somebody breaks the covenant, they would be torn apart. But the idea is that God is torn apart for us so that we might be remade, so that what we were talking about yesterday in the Garden of Eden, the fall, the destruction, the way that the sin had marred and broken our entire world, everything would be put back together. Everything would be made new, but everything would be remade better than new. Everything would be recreated into something incredible. And that's what we long for. That's what we look for over the horizon. But in this moment, just to remind you again, this is about the covenant faithfulness of our God, who makes promises, who keeps promises, and that means we can trust him today and we can trust him tomorrow, because he was faithful then, he will be faithful again.